Hey guys, Adriana Jimenez here with two-time world champion Paulie Malignaggi. Paulie, it's great to finally get to talk to you. We're here in Boston. Demetrius Andrade takes on Walter Katundokwa Saturday night for the middleweight title. How do you see this fight? I know it was originally for Billy Joe Saunders, but how do you see this fight now against Andrade Katundokwa?
I was excited about the Andrade and Saunders fight. I think most of the boxing world was. But this fight's tricky with Katundokwa, because he comes in very unknown, not just relatively unknown, very unknown. And he comes in with a legitimate punch and power. If you see some of this guy's highlights and the knockouts he gets, he's got legitimate knockouts, legitimately separating people from their consciousness. So he's not the kind of guy you want to deal with at the last instant where not a lot of preparation. Usually, the fighter taking the fight at the last minute doesn't have the advantage, because he's got less preparation time. But I think this time, because this guy's bringing such a formidable situation to Andrade, it's a bit tricky even for Andrade, And Andrade's world-class and a world-class operator, but Katundokwa is coming hungry. He's worked hard to get his #1 contender status, and I'm sure he's looking to score a big punch and a big knockout.
I mean, you said it yourself. Katundokwa has that high KO ratio. We know that Andrade is more of a slick boxer. So that being said, I know you're very honest in when you speak about boxing. So what kind of fight can we expect? Is this going to be an exciting fight for fans to see? Is it going to be an awkward fight? What can we expect?
I don't know the exact style about Katundokwa besides the fact that he's a big puncher. I hear he's a bit awkward. I think Andrade is always a guy who doesn't sit on his laurels. He's a guy who he's got the ability to box safe, but he puts together some good combinations in his fights. He's not a big one-punch guy, but Andrade is also not the kind of guy who will just sit there picking you apart one punch at a time either. So I think at a certain point he'll bide his time and try to outbox Katundokwa, and then if he realizes he has him where he wants him, he's going to start putting heavier combinations on him or more lengthy combinations, where the combination will start to become 3, 4, or 5 punches, But if Katundokwa is a guy who shows himself to be lively, shows himself to be live, maybe even touches Andrade here and there and shows, that he's formidable and needs to be respected, I think, you could see more of a chess match and Katundokwa even having some moments, So it's hard to predict a guy you've never seen before, but he's dangerous.
With the original fight scheduled to be Billy Joe Saunders, and with him failing the drug test, what was your reaction when you found out that he failed the test, and what do you make of the whole situation?
It's disappointing when boxing has these failed PD tests constantly. But I think, I said this after the CANELO situation where he failed the test and then he was barely given any punishment. And he was not the first one that had happened with. It happened with a lot of other guys too. I think at the end of the day, you look at these guys and you say, the risk is worth the reward for these guys. There's not enough punishment when a guy fails a drug test. But yet the reward, if they don't get caught, is so super, and it's a level where they can reach millions of dollars and and reach higher accolades because they've doped and gotten better results. So I think until you make the risk harsher than the reward, you're probably going to have more and more guys doping, and you're forcing, because the risk is so small, you're forcing guys that maybe and probably didn't want to dope to now dope. Because think about it. Canelo's the top of the middleweight division. He was doping. So for everybody who's looking up at him, this isn't Rocky IV. You don't stay clean and then beat the dope guy. So for anybody who's looking up at a guy like that, you say, okay, I know the level he's on. I know I'm good. I know he's good. We know he's doping. I guess we got to dope, otherwise we're not going to catch him, right? So, and that's just one example of many fighters that we've seen over the years get barely any punishment for these doping scandals, So, and really, does anybody ever tell you they got caught red-handed? Does anybody ever say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you got me"? It's always some kind of shake, some kind of meat, some kind of medication, some kind of anything else besides the fact that they took it, So you're never going to actually get somebody to admit it. So, you're going to have to be strict across the board all the way, very, very strict across the board all the way, where you're costing fighters years of their careers. But this is a business before it's a sport, and money dictates everything. So when fighters generate enough money, and doped fighters will generate more money because they're getting better results, what happens when you finally do catch them, or if you do catch them, you got to go easy on them, otherwise you're going to cost a lot of people money. And that's the unfortunate thing about this, so that's why I'm done criticizing anybody who fails doping tests at this point, unless boxing, the sport of boxing as a whole, makes a big effort to control this. I don't blame anybody who's doping. I can't.
I mean, I was talking to Freddie Roach a few minutes ago about this topic, and he says that, that fighters are putting their lives at risk on a regular fight, and if someone is caught taking something, it's even worse. You're literally, it's almost a death threat in a sense. So that being said, what kind of punishments should we see in boxing for fighters that are caught?
I think if you say to guys your first time failing any kind of doping test for any kind of doping drug, your suspension is 2 years, and the second time your suspension is 5 years, and the second time is a lifetime ban, which sometimes 5 years can be a lifetime ban because really most guys' primes are not even 5 years. But 2 years, 5 years, done. I think you'll eliminate most guys doping. I think you'll eliminate most guys doping because maybe you get the accident, it give you the benefit of the doubt. Okay, you miss 2 years. You're never going to have another accident after 2 years. And if you did it on purpose, you're never going to do it on purpose again if you had that 2 year ban. So the 2 year ban is a strong warning. And I think after that, if you do 2, 5 in lifetime, I think you'll clean up the whole sport. But then you know what's going to happen? You're going to see guys of that generation if those rules are implemented, you'll see them accomplishing so much less than past generations that they'll be hard to sell. Like you got guys winning titles in 15 weight classes. You got guys jumping up and down all kinds of weight classes. You got guys, throwing 1,000 punches around. You're not going to see that anymore. And so suddenly, how do you sell these fighters when you've been selling all these doped up fighters doing all these amazing things? Now all of a sudden you clean the sport up. Now you have to sell these other fighters who are accomplishing a quarter as much. How do you sell them? Because everybody was stupid enough to buy into the fact that those guys were real fighters. They weren't action figures who were doped up. So it's impossible at this point. I think personally, it's impossible at this point.
It's a tough issue. But speaking of accomplishments, let's talk about yesterday with DAZN signing Canelo. I know you touched on Canelo briefly right now, but $365 million.
Personal thing against Canelo. It's just my opinion on the whole doping situation. He was just the latest guy. As is Saunders, who was the latest guy. But I can't blame anyone at this point, is what I'm saying. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I understand. So what do you make of $365 million? The zone signs him for 11 fights. What was your reaction to that huge figure?
I think it's amazing. I think it's a great time to be a fighter, and it's a great time to be a fan of boxing. These networks are coming in pumping blood and money, the lifeblood, and with all these amounts of money, The Zone has done a great thing. Showtime is over at Showtime. We're planning a big year. Fox has come in and planned the big year next year. ESPN has a big top-ranked contract. So I think all these networks are battling, and I think it only spells success for fan bases and fighters in general. Fighters are going to be paid more. Fans are going to get the matchups they want because all these networks competing against each other, they're only going to win if they make the better matchups, so they have to make the better matchups, So I think the Zone bringing in this huge contract for Canelo, it's amazing, really. I think the first fight is not on the 10-fight deal for $35 million a fight each, but the first fight is still $15 million, which is still a great purse, So you get Rocky Fielding, you get $15 million, and if all goes well for Canelo and $15 million to Rocky Fielding, he's got a guaranteed $35 million per fight for the next 10 fights. I think that is through the roof, and I think for Golden Boy, it gives a chance for their other fighters like Joseph Diaz Jr. and some of their other fighters like Ryan Garcia and some of the other guys who are deserving of a bit more exposure to. I think it gives them a chance to also have that exposure as well. So I think it's good. The fans of boxing, they don't really have alliances to any promoter. They just want great fights and they want to be able to watch boxing. And I think the networks want to create the best product possible. So I think the networks will push for the best product possible, and the fans will watch all of it. And I think it's a great time to be a fan of boxing, and I think it's a great time to be a fighter as well.
The gloves back on and say, "Hey, I want a contract too."
It makes me wish I was a little younger. I know I don't have the ability to fight at that level anymore, even if I was fighting. But I do. It does make me wish these things were happening when I was in my 20s. But hey, I'm lucky enough and fortunate enough to be involved on the outside and be able to work these cards and be able to enjoy the rewards just as all the other fans are able to enjoy the rewards because I consider myself a fan of the sport as well. So I'm excited.
And your thoughts on, you said it yourself, Canelo versus Rocky Fielding. We weren't expecting him to move up to 168. The size difference, it's very obvious. What do you make of that fight, though?
I think it's a good test the waters out fight for Canelo. I think, we don't know a lot about Fielding, but he's a natural super middleweight, and he's a big guy. But I think Canelo has shown the ability to be able to handle world-class opposition. And I think even though he's not tall, he's still a big guy. You know, like he's still like, you know, he was putting on a lot of weight overnight with a lot of these fights and whatnot. So, you know, I think he'll match up decently well. And I'm not criticizing Rocky Fielding, but Canelo has world-class ability as well, you know, in terms of boxing ability. So we'll see. You know, we'll see if it's the size that makes a difference, or if it's just that Canelo winds up being better anyway. You know, like so because yeah, I wouldn't expect. Not that I know a lot about Fielding again, but I wouldn't expect them to test out the waters against a guy with a ton of ability, you know, with amazing amounts of ability. I would expect Canelo to probably be ability-wise better than Fielding, and then after that, you know, you see how he deals with the size on that basis.
All right, and lastly, I want to just close with 2 weeks ago, your reaction to Conor McGregor tapping out. Could be what went through your mind when you saw that happen?
Nothing. I just, you know, I just know I'm right about the guy, and it wasn't a tap out or anything, but it was, you know, him trying to quit a round before, him trying to, you know, tell him it was just business. Like, I don't know. As a man, like, you don't ever bow down your head and fold in the middle of a fight like that. That's just so cringeworthy, you know. Like, that's just such a punk move, you know. You know, when he was telling Khabib it was just business at the end of round 3, that's the equivalent of telling the bully, like, I was only kidding, don't hurt me, you know. Like, that is so cringeworthy and such a punk move, especially when you show yourself as this con artist of a big time fighter that you try to sell to all these fraudulent fans, you know. Like, and in the meantime, you're not, you're just more of a fraud than them, you know. So I think you know, I was just right, you know. It wasn't like, you know, I kind of just smiled and said, I'm right about this guy. Because at a certain point, you know, people start to criticize you so much and hate on you so much because you tell the truth that you almost want to be wrong. You always want to be like, you know what, I wish he would prove me wrong so that, you know, I would be able to say, okay, you know what, I was wrong about him. But no, I'm just more and more right about him. You can't give this guy any balls. He's, you know, if he doesn't have them, you can't teach that.
All right. Well, thank you for chatting with us. We look forward to seeing you very, very soon again and continue talking to you. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And thank you. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.